Everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, well, welcome to our final K12 Canvas user group for 2020. It's been a pretty crazy 2020, as we've all just been chatting about. But I think we're all very much looking forward to 2021. And, it'd be one of the things that has been good is actually, I wouldn't mind just hearing some of everyone's thoughts on some of the things that have been a positive for 2020. There's a lot of negative things, I guess, that have happened during 2020, but I'd love to hear some positive things that have happened with everyone. If anyone would like to unmute themselves and share.
I'm happy to. It's been amazing, the growth of staff. It took a pandemic really to happen. Blythe and a few of her team and us had a meeting earlier in the year, and we were talking about it. It was early on, and it was pretty crazy to think. Just the improvement in skills by staff has been huge. Take up of Canvas is one example of that. People communicating better, working on ways to engage their kids in different ways, creating more content. It's been quite amazing, actually, the skill development. It's been great.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll let you speak, Blythe.
Yeah, I agree. It's just amazing how technology was like on the side for so long, and now it's just a natural part of people's way of functioning. And so, that's been a really great thing, and particularly people's awareness of what Canvas can do has been really increased.
Yeah. Linda, do you have anything you want to share?
I got offered a full-time job with Rolf, so I'm happy.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So I've moved from the library into...
I'm happy too.
We've actually had on the customer success team at Instructor, we've had three babies born and another one on the way. So it's been really great from that perspective for our team. We've done some really, really amazing things together as a team. Really revamped a lot of the way that we do things, and just, I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, but when we were all in lockdown, everyone just came together and worked their butts off, and we just were able to get things done that we thought would take a very long time to do. So that seems to be a bit of a running theme, I think. So I'm kind of glad that there have been positives. Let's just put it that way. It hasn't all been negatives with 2020. So I'm really glad we were able to chat about that. So let's have a talk about what we're here to chat about today, and that's differentiation, and particularly differentiation using Canvas. There are actually a number of tools inside of Canvas that you can use for differentiation. There's a lot of creative things that you can do along those lines. So I'm really excited to hear some of the things that people are doing in relation to that. So I jumped the gun on this question. We've almost kind of answered it. So everyone seems to be traveling. Everyone's really busy, but everyone seems to be traveling along pretty well. It feels like we've gone through the eye of the needle. There's a door that's closed behind us, and things are never going to be exactly the same again. Kind of fingers crossed almost. Even when we have restrictions lifted and things like that, I think, well, hopefully we don't return to how things used to be. I think we can all see that there are some real positives that have come out of what's happened throughout this year, and I hope that we can learn from it and really apply it to what we're doing. I mean, we have this year. I just hope we can keep that momentum and keep things happening from that perspective. So differentiation. There are lots of different ways you can do differentiation inside of Canvas. Rolf, I believe you had some things that you wanted to share in relation to differentiation that's happening at Winona. Oh, you're muted, mate.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted to have some share of examples of things. It's just we asked our gifted and talented coordinator, because he's often doing a whole lot of differentiation work, and he just had an exercise he shared with us and how he pulled that together on Canvas. So I'm happy to show that if you want. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing, and you should be able to share your screen. Yeah, David.
So, so the exercise that he was talking about, he essentially had a choose your own adventure activity. So he's given all the materials and the challenges on the way through, and he's done a little video for them as well. I've got it on double speed at the moment. I might start on that, speaking a bit slow, but it's essentially that choose your own adventure. So I'll start it off and I'll just show you the little bit anyway.
Today's Choose Your Own Adventure sidetrack. We're naming the concepts that we've been exploring through the paradox of the samurai being these brutal warriors on one hand, who are highly trained swordsmen, and on the other hand, being very cultured individuals. We're looking therefore at the concepts of bu and bun. Now, the bu, as you'll encounter, is related to Bushido, which is the samurai warrior code that you've been researching and finding through your formative tasks. There are 3 choices for you here, as usual. You've got the 3 selections based on your skill development. I'm going to show you challenge 2 to begin with, which is the middle range. There's context here, which looks at Go Daigo and Ashikaga Yoshimitsu. And they were the 2, the shogun, Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, and the emperor.
I can have a look at more on there, but he literally just sent this to us just before the bits. I'm not sure how he collected work and so on, but his growth in use of Canvas has been huge. So it's just nice seeing him pull it all together. Normally would have been exercise he just talked through and gave out as a sheet in class. But the way he's developing, I imagine he's collected the work in as well via Canvas and marked it and so on as well. So it's literally only just, is there anything you wanted to add to that, Linda? We only just collected the link to Savo.
Yeah, no, he didn't add anything else, but I was trying to remember what he was saying earlier. I think he tries to guide, even though there's the challenges, he still tries to guide people to the ones they'll be best at.
Yep. Okay. So this is the one he was just about to go through. So clicked it through and he's got his task, details of his task. And then I'm just not sure. Okay. Task 3 carries on into it. I haven't got one of mine, but I might talk of one from last year that I did though, Paul. It was, that worked really nicely. It was with a top year 8 class. It was the year before actually, but just giving a task where we shared a project initially and it had lots of levels of questions. So the students opened the task, they read, essentially it was that one was with iPad. So it was an explain everything task. They opened the project and there were 11 slides in the project. They got harder and harder as the slides went through. They had to spend 10 minutes looking at every slide of the presentation first. And then they had to choose one that was at the level that they were at and choose as high a level as they could. And then they wrote a script for it and they recorded that one slide as a video. It had to be under a minute. But the nice bit that Canvas did for it was the fact that when they had that video finished, then we had it as a discussion board because we wanted interaction, peer interaction. They uploaded their 1-minute video to the discussion board. And then their homework that night was they had to go and watch 2 or 3 other videos and make some constructive comments about those videos. the idea was that they would then go and refine the video and redo it. That part I've never ever nailed, but it was a nice way, same sort of thing of just giving some information, sharing a project, then working on the project, saving it to a discussion board, and then commenting on each other. So a bit of peer review, which was nice. So it's probably something could fine tune further, but same sort of concept as what Ben was doing, just layered questions.
Well, the cool thing with what Ben was doing is it's so simple. You're basically just linking to different pages in Canvas, depending on what skill level you're at. So, I mean, I'm thinking maybe beyond the mark sometimes with differentiation, but it can be something as simple as that. But that's effective, and the students can self-select what they want to do, which is great. You know, it's self-guided learning. I suppose you could even, there's nothing really stopping a student from doing one, and then, you know, if they're keen, they could do another one. If they didn't find it challenging enough, or they wanted to do a little bit more and do a little bit more formative work, although I don't know how many students would try to do more work. But you give them the option. And that's without having to use anything really fancy like mastery paths in Canvas. So nice and simple. That's awesome. Cool. So I know that there's, I mentioned mastery paths in Canvas. I'm not sure if anyone is using mastery paths in Canvas. No.
I'm not personally, but again, there's one of our staff, Casey Linder, who's he's using them really effectively with his Year 12 Business Studies class. And he's put stops in the way, so they don't get too far ahead, but with quizzes and short answers, before they can progress. And also one of our, a Spanish teacher that's done the same thing. She's got students in her class that are, some that are native speakers of Spanish and others that have never spoken a word of it. So just having all information there, but they've got to achieve, before they can progress to the next bit each time. So that's been working pretty well with her as well.
So it might be worthwhile just us having a brief chat about mastery paths and what it is, because maybe not everyone knows. Feel free to chuck in the chat if you haven't heard of mastery paths before. It's been out a couple of years in Canvas, but it's a much more advanced feature inside of Canvas. It's not the type of feature that we'd recommend going straight off the bat using when you're first starting out with Canvas, because you really need to, it's one of those things where there's a lot of upfront work with a big payoff on the back end. So, I mean, that's the same with anything that you do with your teaching, especially if you're just starting out teaching. And my wife is just doing a master's in teaching at the moment, and it's a lot of work setting up courses from scratch. So, but once you've got all your resources in place, it's a matter of planning it out. And what mastery paths allows you to do is to give an assessment to students, and depending on how well they do in that assessment, you can then release some extra content, either more subsequent assessments or just more pages with more content, and it will release 3 different levels. So, when you're teaching, generally you have the chunk of the class in the middle, and then you've got your high flyers and those who might need a little bit of extra help. And that's essentially what Mastery Paths is doing. You're tailoring the content for those 3 categories. So you get to choose what range of scores defines which path they go down of those 3. And then you can also choose, when they go down that path, with the content that you want to deliver to them, you might give them, say, a quiz plus another page of content, or 2 pages of content, plus something else that's on that path. And you can make it so that you can do this or this or this, or this and this, or this. You can kind of self-select it. It's probably better if I show you a little bit what that looks like. That's why I asked if anyone's done it, because I don't have a pre-made example, but I can show you some things in the community. I actually have some links in the resources for this. Let me just open one of these up and share this with you. So we've got, I think this is the video that Adam might have just posted in the chat there in Zoom. So yeah, I do have links to all this inside of the resources, which we'll include with the slide deck when we put it on the community with the recording of this. But you can add course, they're tied to course modules. So the reason why we say don't dive straight into mastery paths is because you need to understand the ins and outs of using modules inside of Canvas before you really dive deep into that. I've lost the chat. I think someone's putting something in the chat. Oh, there we go. Oh, Adam. That's just you, Adam. Oh.
Yeah, I was just putting in the video tutorial, which is very standard. I've also put in another one, which is taking the mystery out of mastery paths, which was a presentation done in StructureCon 2019. And I might also see if I can find that Kona Jones article, Paul. So continue on your merry way, and I might post that up in the chat as well.
We actually have that in.
Oh, perfect.
Where is it here? Hacking Mastery Paths.
Yeah, that is. If there's any consolation, I actually used that article to learn about mastery paths. So it's a really good resource tool, and it actually uses books as a primary differentiator for using it. So it's kind of more K12 focused. But yeah, I'll let you go, Paul. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a great article. So if you do get a chance to look at it, we've included it in the resources there. And if there's any other resources that you come across, Adam, that you think would be beneficial, we'll chuck it in there as well. Oh, Linda, that's cool. And so someone at CanvasCon used Mastery Paths as an escape room, an escape room, not escape.
That's something I'd say for sure.
You're rubbing off on me, mate. So yeah, Mastery Paths, you essentially add in your modules. You need to be very familiar with how modules work and have all your content structured in modules and know how to add content to modules. It's kind of like the advanced version of using modules. So you can add in page content, and this is what I'm talking about, conditional items. So when you have an assessment, you get to choose what level of points. So if they score between 4 and 8, this one's a bit weird because it goes up to 100. I think it's meant to be 10. If you score between 4 and 8, you'll get this assessment and this assessment. If you scored above 8, then you get this separate assessment. And if you score below 4, then you probably need a little bit of extra assistance. And so there's a basic assessment that you can go through to help you with that. And you can, so you assign the task to the mastery path, and it will only appear to the people that get those respective scores. So it's quite involved to set up, but once you get it, you can view a breakdown of who's on the different paths. It's all right there inside of Canvas. Okay, so let me, whilst I'm on this page, the resources page, there's a lot of other ways that you can differentiate inside of Canvas. We've talked about pages, which I don't even have on here. Just having links to other pages where students self-select where they go and what they want to do. It's a really nice, simple, I'm glad you shared that, Rolf. It's a nice, simple, easy way for anyone to do that. But you can also, hopefully you're aware, if you're not, hopefully now you're aware, you can assign different assessments to individuals inside of Canvas. So when you go to create an assignment in Canvas, by default, that assignment is for everyone that's taking the course. But you can assign it to individual student, you can assign it to groups, and you can assign it to individual sections. So sections are a way of breaking up cohorts of students within a course. So quite often it's used for an individual class if you have multiple classes in a course, but you can actually create other sections within a course, breaking them however you like. So if you do have those high flyers, you could create a section with just those students in it and give them some extra work. So you can differentiate assessment tasks by section. Also by group, you can create group assignments, which hopefully you're all aware of, but also discussions. Now, Rolf, you talked about having discussions earlier. You know, you can actually do discussions by section within a class as well. So if you did want to just have a certain group in the class, you could create a separate section of students and allocate the discussion just to that particular section inside of the course. Has anyone done any of these things in their courses? Got some nods from Blythe. No. Yes from Andy. Hey, Andy. Hey, do you have some stuff you want to share with us? Yes, I do. But I don't want to interrupt. So whenever you're good. No, I'm good. So I've covered up. We were chatting a little bit about mastery paths. I was hoping that we had someone here who was using mastery paths that could do a little bit of show and tell. Yeah, it doesn't look like we do at the moment. But yeah, what do you have? Still there, Andy?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure. Okay, so as in, sorry, I thought you were talking to somebody else. Yeah, look, we did go down mastery paths with a couple of courses. There was a very famous example of a year 11 chemistry course that had considerable use of mastery paths. And while it worked, I think, as you kind of said, just as I came in, you really do have to have your handle on the units and make sure that everything's working properly. Because I think that team maybe dipped in a bit too early, and kind of found some issues with how it worked. So I don't think it was anything wrong with the mastery paths themselves. I think that they were just kind of getting their head around the unit. So we kind of use different methods, I'd say, as our go-to for differentiation. Do you want me to kind of go through some of those now, or do you want to?
No, I'm muted because I had some thunder in the background. I don't know if you heard.
Yeah, I just had some too.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, do you want me to share my screen?
Sure.
Cool.
Everyone is equal in this meeting.
Right. That's
we
great.
all have screen sharing privileges.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, can you still hear me? You still hear me all good? Okay, perfect. I'm doing this on an iPad, so that's why I'm a little kind of all over the place. All right. So yeah, I guess the ways that we look at differentiation. So we did try mastery paths, and I still think there's a really good place for them. But I think as kind of like an easy approach, these are three like really basic ideas, kind of embarrassingly basic, but this is what we're doing. So one of them, Paul, you were talking about just as I came in as well, and that's basically setting up an extension class and then always assigning tasks to that group. So what it actually looks like, if I just jump back in here, in our classes section, so we've got a whole cohort in this one class. So we did use blueprints and associate courses before, but we made a move to try to keep assessment data all together to these cohort classes. So essentially, we've got this extension class here, and there's a number of students that are assigned to it, and parent observers as well. So those students range from all of those classes. So across the whole cohort, all of our 16 Year 7 classes, any teacher can kind of go through the people tab and add one of the students to that extension class. So they essentially sit in those two. And then all we do is every time we have extension type of activities, we just pop them in an assignment group down the bottom. This rhythmic dictation, for example, so this is in my Year 7 music class, I should have said. We had some students that join us that are already really proficient in music, and we want to challenge them right from the first day. So rather than getting them to kind of go through the ropes with everyone else, as soon as we identify with a pre-assessment that those students are ready for extension material, we would send them off using Canvas to this first activity. There's an example here that they listen to, and then they need to notate the rhythm that they can hear. And they can either do that in OneNote and then send it back up to Canvas or something like that. But essentially, we've just got these little activities here. And all we do is we assign it for that extension to group. So it's a really handy way of easily working out, who in your class should be in that extension group. And then anytime you have an extension activity, assigning it to that group. Other classes might want to use it at different times or not use it, that's fine. But we really just use that as kind of one of the first ways that we differentiate. And I can't see anyone, but can you just unmute and jump in if you have any questions about that? Otherwise, I'll go on to the second idea that we use. And this is something that's beginning to gain traction in our school. We've had quite a few workshops with smaller pockets of staff on differentiation, and a lot of the differentiation is looking at gifted and talented and extending that group, but also providing scaffolds for students that need that extra support. So one of the neat ideas that came about from that group was to have a task. It could be an assessment task, or it could be some sort of formative task that you're doing. But you basically work out an extra layer of sophistication that you can tack on to that task. So it could be some sort of way of creating a more abstract idea. It could be a more challenging way of approaching something. It could be a slightly different kind of way of forming a response. And the research around that area tries to say, don't just give extension students more work to do, because that's not really, it's not really fair, I guess, if you think about things. And if you're a bright student, what you really want is more challenge. You don't necessarily want more of the same or more kind of busy work. So we're really trying to keep the students doing the same activity, but working out a way that we can create these extra challenges within that activity. So we're essentially still marking everyone using the same rubric, because they're looking at the same task. They're being marked on the same criteria, but we wanted to work out a way that we can add this extension kind of bracket onto our rubric. So the way we have done that, and keen to hear feedback because this is still very much kind of prototyping, is something that looks like this. So this is an upcoming assessment and something that my students are going to do very soon. And we're just looking at this first bit, this composition task. So they need to compose something in music. Notice that we do have that highlighted support. So for students that need extra support, these are our lower students. They're not the core group of students. There's a real kind of select few students in the whole cohort that would fall into this category. But of course, these plans are available, accessible for everyone. So you might have a core, you know, in inverted commas, student who does need, who thinks actually that support is going to be useful. So for those students, we've got a bit of a scaffolded plan that once they click on, it kind of has some ideas of some of the things that they can do to get started. The rest of the task is just written here. So it's still a fairly open task, and it's something that we work on in class over a number of lessons. But just right at the end, we add this extension kind of criteria. So really, we're saying that all students, if they wish, should be able to would be able to access this if they wanted to. So one of them is having a composition where the students actually record a track, a layer themselves. Another one might be that they, instead of just composing one piece of music, that they look at the structure of the piece and create contrasting sections within that piece. So not adding more, but just being really deliberate about having contrast within that. And the other idea is the same. It's not really so much about sections, but it's more about how can you develop musical ideas. So they're really quite hard activities for a Year 7 student to do, well beyond what we expect them to do. It's Year 9 or 10 kind of levels for what we're looking at. Right down the end, after you see who we've assigned it to, here's the rubric that we use, and we use this for marking. So we've got our criteria, and we would mark every single piece on this same level, which means that whether you're a extension or a core student, or you're someone who had to use the scaffold, you've that letter grade of an A is accessible to you no matter which path you go down. So I think that's important. And not to limit students based on, if they're doing this supported program, you don't want to say they're limited to to getting a C or something like that, because it's sort of creating these unfair boundaries. And likewise, you don't want to immediately say that if you're doing extension work, you're going to get an A. So I think this is a good level playing field. The thing that we add, and the thing that we're really hoping to test out this year, because we've not tested it before, is by adding this extension criteria to the rubric. So we've added this as an outcome by creating an outcome in the upper level, and as you can see here, it's non-scoring. So we're actually tracking two things that are non-scoring here. The composing is just tracking their composition skill, and it's just by way of a summary so that we can keep track on how each student is going with composing more generally. And then the extension criteria is something that we can add to any of these tasks, whether it's their assessment tasks or kind of checkpoints along the way. And really all it's saying is that we can give credit to a student. They might have just attempted the extension work. So they tried to do something. They could still get an A, and if they've attempted the extension work, but it wasn't quite successful, we would just click that box, and that would show up that we're recognizing that they had a go at trying something a little bit more challenging. And then we've got two levels of sophistication on top of that. So the first is I mean, it's a little bit vague in the criteria, and that's something we might go through and add a little bit more detail and descriptors around. But it's really just saying if they've got highly developed skills and an ability to represent musical ideas creatively, and the other one's looking at a real sophistication. So it's almost like if they get the E1, they're working at a year above what we expect them to, and if they get E2, it's like they're working 2 years above what we expect them to. So that's how we're going to mark that task. And again, it keeps everyone on a level playing field, without splitting up the classroom too much. But as I said before, we do certainly have those extension tasks that we only assign to specific classes, and do it that way. So I think that's
awesome.
That's covered everything.
That's really great. Yeah, I really like how you've got the outcomes there separately, so they're not scoring. Non-scoring outcomes, so you can still track it, and you can use the Learning Mastery markbook inside of Canvas to see where all the students are at, if they've even attempted it or not. I really like that. The 0, it still counts even if there's no points, because you can still track that.
Yeah, I think we're kind of hitting a point where it's a good problem, but we're getting a lot of students that are, kind of up in the A category. So it's not a bad problem for a school to have, but it also means that an A kind of becomes a bit meaningless. And if you just keep, seeing that you're getting all the full marks, 5s, A's for everything. As a parent and as a student, you're probably wondering, well, what more can I do, and where's the extra challenge? So this one I'm kind of using as a bit of action research, because part of this differentiation discussion group that we're in requires us to do some action research on something. So I thought I'd use this as my project, and just to get the students' perspective on did they like seeing the task laid out this way, and was it a kind of a motivator to see if they can go and tick those extra boxes. So I'll see how that goes, and probably have some more ideas once the whole thing's finished. But that's the plan so far.
Well, one thing that's popped in my mind whilst we've been chatting is, there's a lot of differentiation's a pretty broad term. And one thing that popped in my head was accommodations. So sometimes things happen, or for whatever reason, students might need some sort of accommodation. And it could be a high flyer. So someone could get in an accident, be in hospital or something like that, and they can't submit the task that was assigned to them and the rest of the class. So one of the good things is that you can create a separate task that is assigned just to that individual. But not just that, you can excuse them in the gradebook inside of Canvas from the original task, give them an extra task that's the modified task, and apply those points to that separate tasks. And the great thing is, only they see that, and no other student sees that. Only that individual student will see that in their assignments inside of Canvas. So it's, there's a lot of ways you can apply and accommodate students through differentiating. That wasn't always a thing in Canvas either. That I remember when that came out, and it was just like, oh yeah, like excused assignments. I don't know had anyone started with Canvas before that became a thing. I don't think. No, I think it's always been here with everyone who's on the call today. But ask Adam. I'm the old fart in the office, so I do remember when it wasn't a thing, and when it came out, I'm just like, oh, this makes so much sense. We can do this now. Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'm the old guy. Thanks, Adam. So, yeah, let me just share my screen just real quick again. I think that's everything that everyone who's on the meeting was putting their hand up to share. But is there anything else that anyone else wanted to share?
We've had a bit of a play with the new quizzes, and quite like the option to be able to moderate and edit like an individual student's ability to retake the quiz. So it doesn't affect everybody, but yeah, it can moderate for individual attempts or give someone a little bit more time. So really enjoying the new quizzes.
Yeah. We won't get you to demo that because you'll see student names and this is being recorded. But Adam, if you can find some links that we can add to the resources or into the chat that talks about that, how you can do the modifications for individual students. Can do. All right. Is there anything else? Any other comments or any other just general questions that people want to ask each other whilst we're all together?
I just have a question for Andy. Since you've stopped using the blueprints and you've gone into sections in one course, how do you do that with your class one notes? Because what we do with our individual classes, we've got like the plugin for a class one note that's kind of generated when they use their own class space in Canvas. What have you guys done with that?
Yeah, that was one of the first things that we lost out on. So that was a bit annoying. What we ended up going down with is actually a bit of a long path, but it's worked out quite well in the end. Is we're using Microsoft School Data Sync or Microsoft SDS, which is basically a way of managing the students and the classes and everything like that. So the start of the year, we get Teams, so Microsoft Teams are automatically created, and then we use the class OneNote from that team. So it means that, yeah, there's a little bit of a disconnect, but we really put a lot of emphasis on making sure that you weave in the Canvas content, and then we're really just using OneNote for those kind of activities where a student needs to write on something or fill in a worksheet or something like that. We're also trying to minimize the amount of times the students need to send too many things back to Canvas. So if it's a quick reflection maybe at the end of class, that's a fine OneNote activity. And what that's meant is that the data that we're getting on Canvas is so much cleaner and clearer, and way more powerful, because rather than having, we had some courses with just literally, thousands of tasks. And it was kind of hard to get a picture of how the student was going with data overload. I think this has kind of clarified things a little bit. So I really do think the two tools work really nicely together. But yeah, we had to go down School Data Sync to get that happening.
Sure. So you're using Teams and Canvas together, because that's kind of what we've got going on as well, and it's trying to work out the stuff that happens in Teams and the stuff that happens in Canvas, and how to explain that to staff and students. So it's I don't think we've got it right yet, but we're certainly would be keen to chat further about your wisdom.
Yeah,
and your
totally.
learnings. Yeah.
One nice thing that you can do in your team, if you are using Teams, is up the top where you can add the tabs. We've made it a requirement that you add your Canvas course in one of those tabs. So really, if you do go through Teams as your first kind of entry point, you've got OneNote and Team and Canvas right next to you up on the top. We still use Canvas for all of our announcements and homework and assessment tasks and everything like that, because it's more kind of cohort stuff. So anything that's there for the cohort, we do it there. And Teams is a little bit like, you know, you can use it if you need to have this like chat with your class, but that's really it. We're not going down the, you know, Teams path too much with classes. It's just a shame that that's the only way school data sync works, is that it creates a team. It'd be nicer if it could just create the class notebooks for us and manage it that way, but you know, Microsoft don't want to do that. So
Thanks, that's really helpful.
So I'm not sure if you saw at CanvasCon, who actually got to CanvasCon? I wanted to see CanvasCon, some of the stuff. Life was there. So there was some announcements in relation to Microsoft and Canvas, because they are one of our partners. So there is some work that's going into Teams and Canvas. But please don't ask us about the details yet, because we don't have all the details yet. No, Adam and I are just the plebs when it comes to that stuff. But once we do have some more information, we're very, very, very keen to share that with everyone. So
well,
I think
probably put that out via a newsletter. And if you got the last newsletter as well, I actually put a link there to an article that was actually raised in, I can't remember the name of the magazine, but it's moving towards, well, the first thing that we can definitely announce is that Teams will be a default conference tool. That's a definite. But there are some other big things that will hopefully happen. But as I said, it's one of those sort of things that Microsoft is definitely embedded, sometimes good, sometimes bad, in the culture of K12s in Australia and New Zealand. And we will, and the moment anything like that comes up, we'll definitely be sharing it, because it's actually in our interest as well. So yeah, it's a pretty fun time, to be honest.
so. Just sorry, go man.
No, I've finished. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, so just on what Adam just said there as well. So that's, yeah, one thing we can talk about. So you can choose Teams instead of Big Blue Button as your conferencing option in Canvas. There's one of the things that's being developed. So that's actually, you know, more developed on the Microsoft side. So you may already be aware that there's an LTI that right when everyone was in lockdown, our engineers built within a few days. They worked hard with the Microsoft engineers, but we built the tool where you can create Teams meetings in Canvas. So that's already a thing in Canvas, but this is going to be something that's going to be deeper than what that is. It's not just an LTI. So it will be an option in Canvas that you can choose to have Teams as your conferencing option. With the ability of playing with some of the settings and stuff, so that it's a little bit more friendly with getting it set up. I know, especially initially, there was a couple of issues around people diving into Teams meetings and students having a little bit too much control in the meeting and stuff like that. So there you go. Microsoft Teams, Canvas, there you go. Thanks, Linda. All right, so I think, is there anything else anyone wants to share?
Yeah, I'm interested in the bit that Andy was talking about from the, and it's making a bit more sense now as well with the use of Teams sort of above it. But the, yeah, from going from blueprints into sections, I suppose we've also got Zoom as well as our video conferencing tool, which hasn't been as much of an issue now. Obviously, we're not in lockdown, but you've obviously were using Teams as your video conferencing, then were you, Andy?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Sections, yeah. It's been one of those things we've wondered about a lot about, yeah, we've sort of gone right down the line of blueprints, and to the extent of locking everything in the blueprint and very much using it as a master course to feed sort of 6 or 7 courses below. And we feel like it's working all right at the moment, but it's always been that niggling thing about we're better off to go sections instead of blueprints. And I know we've talked about this as well, Blythe, and it's
like I still
the best.
yeah, I still, sometimes wake up at night thinking like, is this the right way to go? But
it's not just you.
no. I mean, it's like they both have really great advantages and they both have some disadvantages. Our main driver was actually from progressive reporting, in that we are the way that our SIS worked with bringing marks in. We've got a SIS that I don't think many other schools use. It's called Engage, and the way that worked is that it needed a cohort course to bring those marks in, and we had toyed with the idea of having an assessment course and then as well as your class course, but things just started to blow out, and we just thought, look, let's bite the bullet. We'll hopefully use the cohort course to bring faculties together to build really nice courses that are, well managed, they've got great rich content. It's kind of like the representation of a unit of work. And then the messy stuff that ends up cluttering in our case, ended up cluttering the Canvas courses, we can move those aside to OneNote. If a teacher wants to write on the whiteboard, they now do it in OneNote and just use a blank page and start writing there and kind of capture all of that stuff. And we've also got the cases where you might take content from Canvas, snip it, just throw it into OneNote, draw all over it, and you still have your nice clean version in Canvas, but you've got your notes in OneNote as well. So I think that but it's totally a balancing act, and trying to find the happy medium is tricky.
Yeah, it's interesting. In relation to OneNote with us is really it took off massively. It started with maths and science teachers. Still happy we get lots of questions about what goes where, and I'm still really happy with that, because Canvas is all our communication, discussions, collecting work, everything. It's pretty easy to have the distinction. But that's what I was also wondering about the sections. We deliberately didn't go teams because we just found we use teams for our departments and so on, but not for classes, only because we just felt we were giving the kids mixed messages and there was just too much going on. And we definitely couldn't have done that in lockdown time. But I suppose I'm interested in a solution if you were going down the line of the sections of if OneNotes were created just as individual teachers, creating a OneNote and the links through on the Canvas course, so it doesn't have to be in teams, might have been a solution as well.
Yeah.
We've had a few problems with the LTI and it's usually through kids on the way through choosing not to allow. We worked out one today, girls not allowing the correct permissions for it to talk to, for the two to talk well by the look of things. So we've had sort of mixed uses of people creating the OneNote in Canvas, but then adding a few people in their course manually in, and it's been really challenging actually. Just getting it right and how things talk to each other nicely without kicking each other.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the benefits of having the School Data Sync creating those teams and the notebooks is it's done at the start of the year, and it means if students come and go in classes, it's synced up that way too. So we didn't have to go through the kind of hassle of getting every teacher to go into Canvas and create those notebooks at the start of the year. It meant that they were just automatically created, and then the rollover on SDS is pretty good too, as to see how it maps to the next class and stuff like that.
Yeah, interested. I mean, we're probably on the same boat. The rollover of things is challenging because there's 3 times. We've just gone through the Year 12 rollover. Yeah. I've always wondered why we don't have a course from Year 11 through to the end of Year 12, but I think we're probably on the same.
Yeah, right.
Well,
same.
Semesterized course as well. So we have all the semesterized rollover, and then we have the start of the year one. It just feels like we're rolling over the whole year. It's a bit of
But does everyone do that. So they have, I guess, the Year 12 course starting in term 4, where it's, you know, where they're doing the Year 12 work. Is that what everyone's doing?
Yep.
Okay. No one's doing, like, you know, Year 11 right to the
Just
end
in
of
New
the
South
year.
Wales.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I've always, I don't know if it's from a back end admin sort of side that it works that well. I know we get a new timetable, maybe that's why, but it's certainly been a challenge. And the Year 11 courses are set, so they're still completely accessible. So we've got some staff that are carrying on using their, they're still, sticking to their Year 11 course, and they go, we'll do it at the beginning of next year, and it just feels like we've got, it's challenging. The rollovers are really challenging.
Well, another reason we went to the cohort courses was, I think our school does this probably pretty poorly, and I don't think other schools do this. But essentially, that term 4 Year 12 class structure gets totally rewritten for the start of the next calendar year. So as in, like, all the students and teachers pretty much are moved around into different classes. So the only way that we were able to get some continuity, because if you start some work in the term 4 course, we were rewriting to be a completely different course for the start of the next calendar year. So it means that your work is kind of dotted up into different places. Yeah. So now with a cohort course, it means that all you're doing is you're moving sections within a course. So the course itself stays, and that's worked so much better. But I think that's a problem unique to us.
And then students can move from section to section, and it's not losing their data. And
that's right.
With Canvas, so long as the assignments are submitted to a course, they're not submitted. They can be assigned to a section, but they're submitted to that specific course. So as long as you're moving within the course. Sorry, my wife is teaching piano. If you can hear that in the background.
I thought it was me.
But there wouldn't be that data loss because they're still enrolled in the course, and unless they change classes. Change actual courses to a different subject. Yeah,
that's all right. They don't normally come back to it though if they've done that though. So with that as well, Andy, with you changing course, the students changing. Essentially, you're saying they could be in a different Year 12 class beginning of next year to what they are now.
Yep.
And the school data sync with Microsoft, does it take their stuff from one notebook to another, or you just don't do much in 4th term in case, I suppose?
Yeah. So with this has been challenging as well with school data sync. What we've done, because they're still in their same configuration in term 4. So we've actually kept their OneNotes going till the end of the year, and then next year when they do get moved around, we'll put them into their new classes. So it's Canvas is reflecting the right kind of stuff, but OneNote, which we're not using for anything too high impact, that gets made at the start of the next year.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for your share of stuff, Andy. It was
no worries.
Fantastic.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, I think we're just about ready to wrap up here. So the next session, last user group, we had these different topics that we wanted to have a look at. These were suggestions from different people. Differentiation came out on top by a long margin on the people who responded in our follow-up survey after the user group. So that's why we tackled that today. Is there anything anyone wants to add to this list?
Not that I can think of really at the moment, but there was this one thing what Blythe was talking about with the new quizzes. We've had a bit of problems with the new quizzes with blueprints, in that so we've ended up going back to the old quizzes. I really like the new quizzes, but if you pushed out a quiz to say 8 courses from a blueprint and you changed the quiz in the blueprint, the changes didn't come through. So it's almost like templating it. Yeah, it just sends it through as a template, and then so
I think, Rolf, once you do the first sync, then you can't change it.
Yeah. So that's been a bit challenging for us as well. We sort of haven't broadcasted. We've just been saying people use the old quizzes and not sort of explaining why. It just gets messy. But it'd be nice if that was. I know it's still in a bit of a beta phase, I think, is it, Paul?
Beta is not the right word. So it's production code. It's kind of quasi beta. So yeah, there are some things, because of the way that it was initially built as an LTI tool, it doesn't interact with Canvas exactly the same way as the old quizzes used to. So there is work to sort that out, essentially. So that is happening, but it's a huge project. Quizzes is probably one of the most non-trivial parts of Canvas. So it's a huge task. It's been an ongoing thing for the last 18 months or so at least. But it is being worked on currently. But I mean, yeah, New Quizzes has some really great stuff like Blythe shared.
Nice.
And some of the question types, authoring it is way better than the old quizzes as well. It's just much nicer, much cleaner. But yeah, there's still a couple of things that are being worked on, but they are being worked on.
Yeah.
So the question banks are really useful as well. We've got some departments that have got banks with hundreds of questions, and especially for year 12, sending out random quizzes and getting students to do things over and over again as kind of exam prep has been really good.
Yeah, and that's also something with the question banks of really trying to get questions right before you push in the course, because that's when the question bank is created. So I sort of found that where I've doubled up on things sometimes, where I pushed it too early and thought I'd edit it and fix it and push it back. So, but question banks are amazing. Makes it worthwhile putting a lot more time into the first one you make, because you can reuse it, and very cool.
Okay, so let me just share my screen again. So what we might do, we might send out another just quick follow-up survey to see what people are interested in for the next user group. It won't be till probably March next year. February is a little bit early, or maybe late February, early March. We want school to be underway because it's hectic at the start. But everyone wanted to have it once a term. It was a huge majority when we were doing that. That poll in the last user group. So we'll definitely get all that organized. All right. Well, as I said, we've got those resources that we put in the slide deck. We'll be showing that. This is being recorded, so we'll put that up in the community so you can access it as well. But unless anyone has anything else, thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks.
Thanks,
See you,
Paul.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul. See ya.